Welcome everyone to this webinar called Winning the Race to the Ideal Customer. We're hosting this as a true global webinar today since we're located in Sweden and in Canada today. So my name is Jakob Löwenbran and I'm the founder of LeadSuis. We're a European lead generation and telemarketing agency helping B2B companies in IT and technology identify and initiate dialogues with prospective clients. We also have a friend of mine here today, Magnus, Sandman, who is Vice President of LeadSuis, a marketing automation software company from Sweden. Welcome, Magnus.
Thank you.
Okay.
Hi, everybody.
But then we also have our celebrity guest here today, Craig Elias. A warm welcome to you, Craig.
Thank you very much. And it's funny, I don't think I've ever really been called a celebrity before, but I guess the celebrity or the expert always comes from afar, right?
It is.
Yeah.
Just a short background of this webinar for everyone who wonders why we three is doing this together is that I had a webinar this spring with Jill Conrad, and when doing research before that webinar, I found some interesting comments on her blog and on different related pages from a guy called Craig Elias, and that intrigued me. So started checking out his blog, and pretty soon he popped up everywhere I went, and that made me contact you, Craig. And I'm really happy we can have this this webinar with you, since you have great topics you talk about, and you have very interesting thoughts and strategies in this area of sales and lead generation processes. So we're really glad that you're here and that we're doing this together today. So great.
Well, thanks for having me. A couple of things I've done is I've taken the handout. So those people that are on the call, if they want to be able to either now or later want to be able to print a handout. So there's a handout available if you just go to one of my favorite URL shortening companies called bit.ly, bit.ly. And if you just go to bit.ly handout-ideal customer race, you can print out the handout for today. You can print it out later if you want. And in a day or two, Jacob, the recording should be available?
Absolutely. We will have it up as soon as possible, hopefully already tonight. But yeah, definitely in 2 days. But you will get a notification on that.
Okay. And if people have questions, there's a box on the right-hand side, a chat box, so you can ask questions along the way. And we all kind of got started because we all had a similar philosophy, right, Jacob, Magnus?
Definitely.
And our perspective is that sales is all about how do you get the pole position. So in Formula One racing, the statistic is that greater than 50% of all races are won by the person that gets the pole position. So in many ways, the race is over before it even starts. And I'm not a Formula One aficionado, but the way I understand Formula One is that the first 10 or top 10 finishers in pole positions are not allowed to make any changes to their car from the time they qualify to the beginning of the race. No changes allowed. And those that are, position 11 and back can make all the changes that they want, yet it still doesn't seem to matter. So a quick history about me. I'm Craig Elias, and I'm just a lucky sales guy. For 20 years, I just had this unbelievable knack of just showing up in the right place at the right time. And it just happened. And then one day, it stopped. And I couldn't figure this out. And I was lucky enough that I had some holiday time coming to me. So I took 2 weeks of holidays, but what I did was I took afternoons off for a month. And I had a nice house down along the river in Calgary. And I spent an entire month reflecting on my successes as a salesperson. And I figured a few things out. And as a result of that, I came to believe that there could be, if you do it effectively, a silver bullet in sales. And for me, it's all about timing. How do you get in front of the best prospects, or in this case, ideal prospects, whatever, at exactly the right time? And I took what I figured out, and I wrote a book. And I reached out to some people that were pretty significant, and I asked if they would endorse the book. They all endorsed the book. The year the book came out, it actually won an award for one of the top sales books of the year. In fact, it came third, just behind Jill Conrad's book, her new one called Snap Selling. Now, in the book, there's really three primary things, and these were the big epiphanies I had that summer. The first epiphany I had was that when I was out there selling, the people I was selling to were always in one of what I call three different buying modes. First one is called status quo, sometimes called path dependency. People have done the same thing the same way for so long, it's just simply keep doing the same old thing. It's kind of like a QWERTY keyboard. We all type on a QWERTY keyboard. That's the top row with your left hand, QWERTY. There's a faster way to type, a Dvorak keyboard. But we all learned this way, and it's just easier to keep doing the same old thing. I also realized upon my reflection that on occasion, people would be searching for alternatives. They're unhappy with what they have, and they're doing something about it. So status quo, happy, not looking, searching for alternatives, unhappy, looking. And then what I realized was that every single 6, 7, 8-figure deal that I could remember in almost 20 years, I got to people in between those two traditional buying modes. I found people who were unhappy with what they have, but weren't doing anything about it yet. Unhappy enough to complain, unhappy enough to think about it, but not unhappy enough to act. And I recently became aware of some research by Forrester. I saw a video that a guy named Scott Santucci talked about, or he was talked about at this Corporate Visions conference. And the research that Forrester did said that if you get in first, and if you establish the buying vision, you are given, and I say the word given, that's not the word Forrester uses, but you're given the business 65% of the time. They don't even talk to any of your competitors. Only 35% of the time is there a bake-off. So if you get in and set the corporate vision, it's given to you. If you want to watch the video, it's at bit.ly, first in wins. Use the capital F, capital I, capital W, or it will not work. And right at almost exactly the 27-minute mark is when they start talking about this. So people have for a long time tried to use brute force to make sales work. And I found some research a while ago by McKinsey that says brute force doesn't work. You can't keep phoning people and phoning people. Are you ready to buy? Are you ready to buy? Because here it says, top right-hand corner, too much contact is the biggest reason that people get frustrated with their current vendor, 35% of the time. So it doesn't work for the customer. The problem is it also doesn't work for the salesperson because they get rejected, they don't like cold calling, and what ends up happening is they get this whole resistance to doing it. I'm a big believer that whether you call it cold calling, warm calling, smart calling, whatever it is, I don't care, but you've got to reach out and talk to the customer. If you're not actively doing this and you're waiting for someone to call you, you're stuck on the back end of that 35% trying to fight for the business. So you've got to find a way to do this. So right now, if you just I'll call willy-nilly, it doesn't work for the customer, it doesn't work for your sales team. So you got to find a way to figure out how do you get in front of people at exactly the right time. So my first big epiphany in the summer of 2002 was there was this thing called the window of dissatisfaction. People are unhappy and thinking of changing. If I just call them, I'd be out to the races. I thought I was brilliant. But then I couldn't figure something out. How could somebody be in this buying mode of status quo on Monday, be in the window of dissatisfaction on Wednesday, and be searching for alternatives on Friday? And then I realized what had happened to these people is there had been a very specific event that made them unhappy with what they have. And I want to make sure that everybody on this call understands it's an event, not a circumstance. Now, I have a bunch of different examples, but I'm going to use one of my favorite ones. And it's a business-to-consumer example. We'll get to the business-to-business stuff, but I want to give you this one. Because when something happened to me, it's like, hey, I did that. And all of a sudden, I talked to other people, and they did the exact same thing. So it turns out, let's talk about life insurance. When do people buy life insurance? From what I am told, there is one single event that drives more people to buy life insurance than every other event combined. And it's when they get pregnant. When they get pregnant, what else do? They get a will. They change where they live. They leave an apartment. They buy a house. They get a four-wheel drive car, a station wagon, or a minivan, all based upon that specific event. So the same is true even with your own selling efforts. So I want to make sure everybody understands the difference between an event and a circumstance. Okay? If someone has a falling stock price, that's a circumstance. Every day, a little bit worse. Shrinking margins, that's a circumstance. Every day, a little bit worse. They're currently unhappy with the solution they have. That's a circumstance. Nothing's going to make them act unless there is an event. And some of the events I think you should care about is if one of your customers' competitors gets acquired, that's an event. Today is very different than yesterday. There's a change in decision makers. I love a change in decision makers. We've all probably got stories of an account we couldn't get in. And then one day, there's a change in decision makers, and they welcome us in with open arms. From what I have been told, an organization that's a change in decision makers is on average up to 10 times more likely to switch vendors. They win a large customer contract. Now they have money that they didn't have before. People that get some sort of funding or have a big financial event, those people are up to 8 times more likely to buy now than before they had that financial event. Maybe their competitor launches a new product, and now they say, oh, we got to do something about this. Or one of my other favorites is your competitive salesperson moves on. There was a relationship there between the decision maker and the salesperson, and that relationship has been severed. Now is the time to go in. A lot of people say, hey, they've had the same vendor for 3 years, they're not going to switch. Really? From what I understand, on average, about 3% of people change jobs every single year, which means I can almost guarantee you with 100% certainty either the decision maker that made that decision has left or the salesperson who sold it has left. Well, a lot of people go, well, you know what, I'm very familiar with this term called BANT, B-A-N-T, Budget, Authority, Need, and Timeline. And in the old days, that's the way that purchases were made. These days, 77% of all major purchases are unplanned. Something happens, makes them important, and people then make a purchase. The message here is that people don't follow BANT anymore. Budget, authority, need, and timeline is too late. That's the right-hand side of that 35% of the equation. If you want to be able to go download the paper and see all the statistics on this, here's the link, bit.ly, bit.ly/new purchase path. Make sure you use the capital N, P, and P. So I want to talk about triggers and the buying modes we talked about and compare it to BANT, and you can see how there is a better way to win the race to the ideal customer. So what happens is, in my world, someone has something they're happy with. They're in this buying mode of status quo. This is talking to an organization or person who has some form of authority. Odds they become your customer now, pretty close to 0. But then all of a sudden, something happens, and they want to change. Now, research shows that if you get in front of these people, they're now in the window of dissatisfaction. These are the people that, from a BANT perspective, have authority and a need. You talk to these people, and odds are, if you're the first one in, you will get the business, on average, about 75% of the time. The cool thing is, not only do you get a high close ratio, but you also get the ideal customers. And for me, an ideal customer has 3 characteristics. They're loyal, so they're going to be here for a while. They're very profitable. They generally don't complain about price. And they give us the things we want the most, testimonials and referrals. The problem is that not everybody jumps in at the right time. All right. Then there's this other event where all of a sudden someone can afford to change. Now they start the process of looking for something else. These are people that generally now have a budget. They've had a financial event. Odds are now you try to get these people as a customer, you're only going to get them 1 time out of 6 or maybe 1 time out of 7. You are 5 times more likely to get someone to become a customer if you reach them before they have the event that puts them in this searching for alternatives mode or before they actually have a budget. If you want to have a look at the report. Aberdeen actually sells the report. It's $400, but if you go to bit.ly/leaky sales funnel, again, use the capitals, you can, if you want, go download and read the whole report. Eric, I had a chance to see Eric. He's one of the co-founders of a very significant sales consulting firm, helps you do Salesforce implementations, all that stuff. He said a couple of years ago that 70% of the decision is made before a salesperson even gets involved. So that's that left side of that 65-35. By the time people start reaching out, they've made 70% of the decision. So people now then are in this buying mode of searching for alternatives. They have a third event where they can justify their decision to other people, whether it's their shareholders, superiors, subordinates. Maybe in a personal life, it's your spouse or your parents, maybe your kids. And only when they have that last event, there's an actual timeline, which at this point, someone's made a decision. There's a whole new status quo. Odds to become your customer, pretty much zero. As far as I'm concerned, you can't win the race to the ideal customer using BANT. It is just too late. And I had a chance a little while ago to do some research by somebody else. So Steve, he came to my attention through a blog post that I saw, and he said that by the time the customer's halfway through the decision-making process, that 75% of the time they've already decided who they're going to go through. So before they even start the process of searching for alternatives, they know who they're going to go with. So the whole thing here is you've got to focus on people who have authority and now have a need. And I will argue very heavily that for most people on this call, if you've ever been in sales, it's happened to you in the past. If you were to make a list of some of your successes in the past, this is this customer name down the left, make a list, and then start a column across the top and just say, okay, which ones did you have a shorter sales cycle? Which ones were easy to make? So we're going to go down and put a check mark next to each one that has these characteristics. Which one had a higher price? Which ones are referenceable? And my argument is any of those that have 3 or more check marks next to their name, you got them during this window of dissatisfaction. They had authority and need, had not yet defined a budget. You got in first, defined the buying vision, and they pretty much just gave you the business. If you want to learn more about the window of dissatisfaction, just go to windowofdissatisfaction.com, fill in the form, you'll get the template, you'll get a link to a recording that tells you how to use it. So for me, the big message here is you want to focus on those people who just had an event and they want to change. They generally come in 3 forms. First one, they have a bad experience with the current provider, usually caused by a change in people, the product, or the provider themselves. One of my favorite events is a change in decision makers, and I love a change in decision makers. A new decision maker comes in, and you can see it right now at Yahoo, the new CEO of Yahoo, cleaned house. What ends up happening is they go in, they want to make change happen, they want to make change happen fast, and they have no ties to the previous vendor. When someone has an event and they want to change, it opens the door. An account that might have been like Fort Knox, you called, you emailed, you did everything you could, but no one returned your call, and all of a sudden one day, they call you back. Something has happened. There's been an event that makes them unhappy with what they have, and now they're thinking of changing. So all of a sudden the door is open. You've got to go in now because before too long they'll become unhappy enough they'll talk to somebody else. What happens when someone has an event and they want to change, it puts something on their to-do list. The problem is it never makes its way far enough up the list for them to do something with. Now, I want to map a very traditional marketing thought process around ADA, awareness or attention, depending how you think of it, awareness, interest, desire, and action. And I want to map this because I want to now sort of shift this a little bit, and I want to start talking a little bit about what does this mean from a marketing perspective, not just from a sales perspective, right? Someone's in the buying mode of status quo. They have an awareness of what you do. They have an event. They move into the window of dissatisfaction. Now there's some interest. They have an event where they can afford it. They start searching. Now there is desire to go away and do something with it. They have a last event. They can justify it. There's a whole new status quo. Think of this as the action. As soon as someone has an event where they want to change, They're in the window of dissatisfaction. There's interest. What it does is it turns on this thing called selective perception. All of a sudden, they're going to start noticing all the marketing, all the blog posts, all the banner ads, all that stuff relevant to this topic. All the stuff that's been hiding in plain sight is going to jump out at them. It's like when we buy a new car, what do we see? We start seeing that car all over the place. When if you're the women on the call, or our wives for the men on the call, get pregnant, what do you notice all over the place? Pregnant women. And what happens when you or your wife gives birth to your child? You stop seeing pregnant women, you start seeing women with babies. When you sell that old car and buy a new car, you don't see the old car as much, and you start seeing the new car all over the place. So the secret here is to reach out. Now, Andrew Gaffney has this report, Demand Generation, and he asked a question of decision makers. Last major purchase, how was your first point of contact made? We're all in the business of lead generation, marketing, sales. We'd like to think this big blue area, this is us. We're reaching out to people at a time when they're most likely to become our customers. Turns out, not even close. The decision maker said less than 10% of the time was it a vendor, a salesperson, who proactively reached out and contacted them. Now, there's a way to be able to do this using changes in decision makers by using LinkedIn. I know, Jacob, I think you're going to share with us a couple of things around how to make that work.
Yes, exactly. So to go a little bit practical here, we're going to show you a little bit of example how to find quite easily and very effectively trigger events with decision makers, changing control in different companies. So I presume that most of you have a LinkedIn account, and what not all of us use on a daily basis is the quite powerful search options that LinkedIn have. So here you see, for example, how I want to search for sales managers in some certain industries I might be interested in, and I also can choose geographic search quite close within my city. In this case, Gothenburg in Sweden. And what you see on the next slide here is that here we have a lot of sales managers that I want to follow and see what's going on. Do they change position, and how do I do that? And this gives me, if I can track and trace when they change a position or change company, I can both get information of new decision making on new companies, as well as, you know, who even if I don't have them here, I can presume that their old position must be filled by somebody else. And what we do here is to do a save search that actually gives you the changes from week to week in a condensed weekly, as you see on the next slide here. So what we do is just save the search, try to, you can do several of those if you're tracing many different titles or different geographic areas you want to have an trace on. And then we basically get a condensed email from LinkedIn every week. What's going on? If somebody have changed position or title or company and so forth within this search frame here. So this is a quite basic but also very powerful example of how to follow up on trigger events within the area of change of position or change of jobs. And
so the only challenge that I have, and I have a few of these set up. The only challenge I have with these is I only get notified weekly. There is a iPhone app called Job Change Alerts that you can use, and it will notify you every day. You can use the online version of that is called Sales Loft. It's funny how there's always this yin and this yang. So the good news is you get them more often. The bad news is you can't filter for just the ones you're after. So what I do is I generally open up those emails in a webmail, and then I do a search for VP, 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 and just the things where there's been a change in VP titles are the ones I go focus on. The other piece here that for me is really important is that too many people try to figure out what are the 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 different events I can go focus on. And they get inundated with information. I think the better thing to do is figure what are the top 1, 2, or maybe 3 events that drive you business. And how do you go focus on those, and then the impact, whether you call it the domino effect or the ripple effect, but what's the impact of that change? So let me give you an example. So Magnus works at an account, and let's pretend for now he was what I call a friendly, someone who was friendly towards our product or service, was a customer. Magnus leaves, he goes somewhere. The first thing I got to figure out is where does he go? Because if he was my customer in the past, odds are he'll become my customer again. Now, sometimes what happens is you've got a friendly. You've got someone who likes your product or service. You're sort of at mid-level management, but you're not the #1 provider, and you want more business. And in order to get that, you know you have to go to Magnus's boss, and you keep asking for an introduction, but he won't make it. And if you go around Magnus and go talk to his boss without his permission, odds are, I'm sure we all had stories about this, someone like Magnus gets frustrated, pissed off. What do? They cut you off, and you get nothing. Well, guess what? Magnus is no longer there. You can go talk to his boss, and there's no consequences, nothing but upside. And then someone comes in and takes Magnus's place. You want to make sure you start fostering a relationship with that person. So that's where Magnus was a friendly. The other version is, let's say, where he's an unfriendly. Was not a fan of your product, your product, or your service. He leaves. Hooray! The floodgates are open. You go talk to the new person in that job. My perspective is the very first question you should ask that person. So let's say Jacob takes Magnus's boss. I'm going to go see Jacob, and the first question I'm going to ask is, where did you come from? Because Jacob has left an organization, and that's going to put a new person in that job. So now every one of these that you see through LinkedIn or job change alerts or SalesLoft, it creates 3 totally separate opportunities. Some of my customers, their only strategy is to actually follow up on bounced emails for their marketing automation emails and go figure out where everybody went and sell to those people because they know they've had the event. So let me put marketing and sales together. Okay, on the left is the ADA, on the right is the BANT. So we start out, there's awareness, someone has authority. Okay, they have an event, there's interest, or from a sales perspective, there's need. They have the next event where they can afford to change, now there's desire and a budget. They have the last event, they can justify the change, there's action or a timeline. Here's what marketing understands. What marketing understands is the farther down you go, the more likely people are to buy. But what sales gets is that the longer you take to get to someone, the less likely they are to buy from you. So the secret is to start to people in that window of dissatisfaction where they've had an event, they want to change, there's interest, and there's need. So there's 7 simple steps to bring marketing and sales together. The first step is to choose the ideal prospects. It's the ideal prospects that turn into ideal customers. And for me, ideal prospects have 3 primary characteristics. They have money, they have the authority to spend it, and they have influence. They have friends just like them. So why are these people the ideal prospects? The reason they're the ideal prospects is, remember those 3 events people have to have? I want it, I can afford it, I can justify it. Well, guess what? You talk to people who have money, authority, and influence, they only have to have the first event. They don't need to have the event where they can afford to change because they've got the budget. They don't need to justify it to a ton of people because they've already got the authority. And the good news is when they become their customers and they tell their friends, you get a whole bunch of prospects and customers just like them. So right back to what we did before, right? Choose the ideal prospects. Have your salespeople analyze their best customers. Okay? Make a list. Put a check mark for each one that was, short or easy to make. They paid a higher price. There's going to be a reference. Again, those with 3 or more check marks are the ones you want to duplicate. Those are the ones you want to go analyze. Now, my first event or my first epiphany that summer of 2002, there's the window of dissatisfaction. My second epiphany, the window is created by an event. My third epiphany that summer was that I'd done something different than I'd done for almost 20 years. For 20 years, my sales managers taught me, if you lose the business, you never lose the lesson. So I spent most of my sales career doing what my managers told me from this perspective. I did what was called a lost sales analysis. But in the summer of 2002, that's not what I'd done. I actually had analyzed the business I had won. So I was curious. I went to the internet. I did a search for the phrase, the term, sales analysis. I went to Google, put quotes around the two words, sales analysis, and the reason for the quotes is those two words together in that order. And I found in the summer 2002 about 1 million pages that talked about sales analysis. So then I added the word lost to that phrase. So between quotes, the phrase lost sales analysis. And I found about 50,000 pages on the internet. And I thought, but that's not what I'd done. What I'd done is I'd done a form of what I call one sales analysis. So I replaced the word lost in my search and did a search on Google for the phrase one sales analysis, quotes around those 3 words. In the summer of 2002, 1 million results for sales analysis, 50,000 results for lost sales analysis, but when it came to one sales analysis, I found only 2. And then all of a sudden what I noticed, as soon as I'd done this sort of one sales analysis, I started seeing people all over the place that experienced the events, the triggers that I had figured out. So there's a guy named John Lubbock, and he says what we see depends upon what we look for. So in order to find the best prospects, you've got to figure out what are the best events. And it's through this process called the one sales analysis. Every time you win an ideal customer, someone who gets 3 or more check marks next to their name, maybe you might say someone who's over a certain dollar size, okay? There's a form. You can go get it at One Sales Analysis. There's a video that explains how to use it. You need to ask the primary decision maker 4 big questions. And here are the 4 questions. First question, what event or what events led up to this purchase? Now, when you ask that question, more times than not, what people do is they tell you about the second event that helped them afford the purchase. So what we have to figure out is how do we ask a second question, because we want to get to what was the first event that made them want to change. So my first question is, what event or what events led up to this purchase? The second question is, when did these events happen? And what you're listening for, and what you may have to probe for, is what was that very first event that made someone want to change? The third question, what made you choose us? I did not ask, why did you choose us? I asked, what made you choose us? I have been told that why questions make people defensive. So what made you choose us? And the reason we want to ask that question is that we as sales and marketing people, we have this thing called content, which we use to try and engage prospects. What our prospects have is this thing called context. We have content, they have context. Context helps them understand how is our content relevant to them. The problem is that only a small portion of your prospects have the ability to do what I call mental gymnastics, which is combine your content with their context and figure out how or why is this relevant to them now. In order to get the rest of the people who can't do the mental gymnastics to become our customers, we have to extract that out of the heads of people that are smart enough to combine content and context. Let me give you an example. If you go to someone and say, I got 18 years experience, that's your content. What the prospects have is context, and they have experience. And what they convert that 18 years of experience to is they go, oh, that's great. I know what that means. That means you're probably going to get it done faster, and you're probably going to make fewer mistakes. But not everybody can do the mental gymnastics. So you have to spoon feed the rest of the audience. That's why we ask that third question. What made you choose us? Last question. How can we make it easier to become our customer? Every customer has to go through 3 things. They have to find you. They have to understand what's the real value of being your customer. And then they actually have to buy something from you. So what you're listening for, or what are some of the things you can do to make it easier to find, easier to understand, and easier to buy. And once you have have asked those questions, classify the opportunity using the checkbox in the note sections, and you want to start searching for patterns. You know, which ones had a really high close ratio? Which ones had a short sales cycle? Where did the lead source come from? How did I get that? And what were the events that brought that opportunity to us? So once you've figured out best prospects, best events, you need to find a way to create content that's going to jump out at people everywhere they go. Just like all of a sudden Jakob says, hey, Craig Elias, I read some stuff. All of a sudden, there I was, everywhere he went. So there's a bank in Canada that started doing this, and it was like they picked all the stuff out of my head. It was brilliant. They put out an ad focused on people who just got pregnant. 6:26, your wife tells you she's pregnant. 6:27, your apartment looks small. 6:28, time for mortgage advice. Guess who notices this ad? All the people that just got pregnant. Then they focused on someone who just got a raise. Who sees the ad? All those that just got a raise. They focus on those that just got a job, right? Move out of the apartment. Oh, you're probably going to need money for a car or something of that nature. They did all these different things. You get engaged. They focused just on people that had a very specific event. A couple of years ago, I had the benefit of bumping into a guy who was the product manager for a pain relief drug called Elias. And it came out to the marketplace, and they did all this traditional marketing. And then after about a year, they did some research, and they found something really interesting. What they found was that the vast majority of the people that were buying their product were women who started buying it after they'd been diagnosed with arthritis. And they shifted all their marketing to focus on just that audience, women in their late 40s, early 50s, just diagnosed with arthritis. That's where all their money was spent. And they tripled their revenues in less than 18 months, just by focusing on that audience who was much more likely to become the customer. So now we got content. Now we need to solve the here versus there problem. And the here versus there problem, here is where all your content is. There is where all the people are. So the question is, how do you find a way to go where all the people are? So there's something that's been put up by Google recently called the Zero Moment of Truth, ZMOT, Z-M-O-T. And if you go look up the Zero Moment of Truth, there's a book you can go get. It's free. You can download it. I don't even ask you for your email address. And it talks about the here versus there problem. Someone wants to change. What do they start doing? Where are they? Where do you need to find a way to put your content, whatever it is, in places where people are, and then drag people back to you? And then once you drag them back to you, you need to find a way to convert those visitors, what I'll call unknown visitors, into known visitors, finding a way to put something behind a form. And then when someone fills in the form, for me it's really important that at that point you don't just put them on a list, just nurture them, do nothing. I think it's important at that critical moment, someone's thinking of changing. Now's the time you can set the buying vision. You're on the left side, that's 65%. You actually want to have a salesperson or somebody in your lead gen team reach out. And you want to do it as fast as you can. And I know, Jakob, you're going to talk about some of the research by MIT and talks about the power of the 5-minute follow-up, right?
Yeah, some of you might have heard about this study made by a guy called Dr. James Oldroy at MIT, as you said. And his study was called the Lead Response Management Study, which actually has an own homepage. And one of the findings was that if you call an inbound lead within 5 minutes of the lead came in, instead of after 1 hour, you're 100 times more likely to get in contact with a person. 100 times, not 100%. And you're about 21 times more likely to qualify the lead and actually get it to be interested in your proposition and your value. And one aspect of this is that we have been discussing earlier here, Craig, is so what should you ask when you follow up a lead like this? And what we have discussed is that it's basically 3 questions, as you see here. And the first question is, So, did you get my email? Did you receive the email with the link and and so forth? Because everybody has spam filters today, and they can get stuck in different mailboxes or inboxes and so forth. So you want to make sure that they actually have got your kind of content they have downloaded or whatever request they did. And since everybody is busy today, crazy busy, as Jill Connor would have put it, we fast move on to our second question. What is it that caught your attention and made you say, hey, I would like to check out this? We want to know what made them curious. What is it that we have in our content that actually grips their interest and so forth? And the last question that is also very important is to learn if they actually can be a sales opportunity. So we had just asked what happened recently that made it more relevant to make this content, to read this content. So we get an idea of what trigger event has happened and what made it so important for him to download this or request this kind of stuff. And from that we can say if they are a qualified lead or not. And if they are a qualified lead, we can start digging into more questions, and they are quite likely to be more interested in continuing the dialogue as well. Some of you maybe think that, okay, a 5-minute response to an incoming inbound lead, that's quite fast. And it's not easy to set up a process like that in order to get it happen. So what do you need to do in order to make it happen? Well, you need to do something like the picture shows here. You need a process with a team that is doing this, and you can do it in-house, or you can do it with an outsourced partner like us at Bright Vision. We do this for a lot of companies that have inbound leads coming, and we need to pick it up quite fast and get them on the phone, so we can have this 100 times more likability to get hold of them. So I just like this picture. Serious Decision. Sorry, it's a consulting firm within the lead management area, and they have this demand waterfall chart that shows the importance of doing this in a structured way. Yeah, I think everybody needs to think about what should we do as an organization in order to shorten our response time for leads, and how can we follow up them as fast as possible in order to get down to these 5 minutes. Somebody might be interested in, is it intimidating when somebody gets you on the phone after just a couple of minutes after you have done a request? Well, the truth is no. Most people like it. And as somebody said, well, you don't want to go into a shoe store in order to be told to come back on Friday to see if they have time to discuss it with you then. And it's starting to get like that in business to business also. You need information now, and you want the contact made at the moment you're interested in discussing it. Okay, Craig, over to you again.
It's funny because I've been doing this for a long time, and to the best of my ability, I will follow up in 5 minutes if I can. In some cases, less. And people say, well, and I try to ask the question, can I take 2 minutes to ask 3 quick questions? And what I can tell you is in the almost 10 years I've been doing this, no one's ever said no. Not in almost 10 years.
Exactly. And we have actually bought stuff that we needed just because somebody was very keen to get the business, and you want people to stand on their toes. You want them to be eager and, not lazy guys.
Yeah, and once we've done this, and now odds are some of them aren't ready, right? Then what we need to find a way to do is nurture. And I know that, Magnus, you want to talk a little bit about nurturing.
Yeah. Even though you have those 5 minutes call-up time, or you have those trigger events, and they show us some interest in our products or services, when you call them or get in contact with them, they maybe the interest has fallen, and we don't want to lose them So have they show interest in one point, they certainly will maybe do it very soon in the future. And that's why we do something called nurturing. So instead of sales getting to watch over them, we send them back to marketing, and marketing will do something that will stay, that the customer will stay top of mind. And it's not a campaign. It's not to do campaigns over and over again and to start from zero. It's to introduce programs. You do a process where you have a period time you get in touch with your prospects and customers to see if the interest has still there. Is it growing? Is the windows of dissatisfaction in place? And then we should talk with them again. And if we go to the next slide, we see that we have different triggers to make them. We send out mail. We could have we have a trade show where they have visit. They have visit us on our website, and we also may have like this, a webinar or something. Just follow them over time and always keep on track on what are their behavior. Are they more likely to be in this windows of dissatisfaction? And then we introduced another word like lead scoring, that every activity of this has a certain score of importance on how we value this interaction with us. So then we could put a table together with all the activities, the frequency of the activities, the points, the activities, and also, of course, demographics like titles and geographics like areas and so on. And then we sum up those points, and we have set a watermark that this is where if we reach, or the prospect, the customer reach these points, we should automatically send the contact information and the information of what type of activity this prospect has done as a lead to back to the sales organization. So we are the watchtower over the what's happening on the market when sales can focus on doing what they are best on doing, closing deals, and are certain that the marketing departments will find this window of dissatisfactions once again and give the opportunity for sales to really walk in that window. And I know, Craig, you have another way to see it when you're ranking what events and how certain events that not just doing this downloading in white papers, and we have talked about other stuff. When you have a bounce address, don't just drop it. That's a call of action for sales to really follow up. And there are others.
Yeah, and for me, the scoring, so that's the online scoring is one piece. When you get a chance to talk to somebody, so if you go to TriggerEventsScoring.com, I'll show you a link in a second. I have a process where I like to figure out what are from my own experience or from your experience, right, when you do this yourself, what are the qualifying factors? And the sort of standard 5 that I use is, has someone recently had an event? Something that triggered them to want to change, afford the change, or justify the change. How long has it been since that event? Because the problem is that when they have the event, they want to change, but as time goes on, that desire dissipates, and they become less likely to act. How far up the organization are you talking? Are you talking to those that have money, authority, and influence, or just those that have authority and influence, or those that might just have influence? And I'm still a big fan that, in spite of, yes, triggers and timing is part of it, but if you can find a way to have some credibility, people now view it less risky to become your customer. So if you already have an existing relationship because you've nurtured them, that's perfect. Or maybe you got referred by somebody else and you're leveraging someone else's credibility relationship, that's almost as good. But if you're just good at what you do and you have expertise, as far as I'm concerned, that's good but not good enough. And then looking at opportunities based upon their long-term potential, not just the current size. And then what you do is you go around and you score each opportunity based upon where they fit. So trigger event scoring is where you can go get the form, and there is a podcast that explains how to use this if you want more detail. But what happens is, okay, what event did someone have? Oh, they want to change. It happened about a month ago. I'm dealing at the top. I didn't get leverage. I don't have an existing relationship, and the potential is significant. So in this case, the opportunity has a total score of 7. 2 for the first factor, 1 for the next one, 2 for the one that comes after that, then 0, then 2. So a factor of 7. For me, anything higher than a 6 is generally worth pursuing. The important thing is that those that score 8, 9, or 10 are always going to get pursued first before something that's a 7 or a 6. So scoring opportunities. And then you need to find a way to notify sales. So sales need to be notified in 3 different occasions. 1, there's a bounced email. We talked about that. They're on your nurture list. That email address bounces. Too many marketing professionals just take the person off the list. That is so the wrong thing to do. Take that, give it to your best salesperson. Watch them go. If at some point someone views some very specific assets, something that helps them justify the decision, cases, white papers, ROI calculators, all that stuff tells you someone's moved to the next level. You better re-inject your salesperson because they might have forgotten about the opportunity. Or if they reach a scoring threshold, like Magnus talks about. And then once you've won, you need to analyze the wins. Focus on the ones that are just like the ideal customer that you got, right? Happen fast. Didn't spend a whole lot of time talking about price. Willing to be a reference. Analyze those. And then when you do the extra analysis, you can then improve a few things. Now, I want to stop here for a second because people go, oh, yeah, I'll go have my marketing person do the analysis. That's the wrong approach. Let me tell you why. The reason is that if salespeople aren't doing this analysis, it's not a survey. You've got to pick up the phone, talk to someone, go see them, take them for coffee, lunch, beer, golf. I don't care. You've got to talk to people in person. Ask them the questions. And what happens is, remember that thing called selective perception? You buy a new car, you see it all over the place. What happens to the sales team is all of a sudden the sales team starts noticing all the events that had happened to their past customers that they learned through the analysis. If marketing always does the analysis, sales doesn't take full advantage of it. And once you've done your analysis, what do? You improve your content so it's more relevant and more important. You improve the location so you solve the here versus there problem. And you improve your scoring so you're reaching out to the right people at exactly the right time. So I have a picture. I'm going to build it out here. And if you would just go to smartmarketingfunnel.com, you can see the whole picture all laid out. So what happens? You want to drive people to a landing page. Here's that here versus there problem. There is where all the people are. Here's where your content or your business is. You want to convert them via a form. You then want to connect to them, 5-minute follow-up, nurture, score, okay? Alert a salesperson when the time is right. Then hopefully, and in most cases, if you do this right and you're on the front end, you get the business. And then what you do is you need to analyze the business because you want to be able to revise your content and where you put it, and you also want to be able to revise your scoring system. Now, there are some resources available. For those of you who are on the call, if you would like a copy of the book that won the award, just go to shiftselling.com/race, fill in the form, tell me if you want it as an Adobe Acrobat file or as an EPUB file. You can put it in a Kindle, an iPad, whatever it is you're using to read books, you can stick it in. Magnus, you want to talk a little bit about your LeadSuis starter?
Yeah, we are now releasing a free version of LeadSuis in 1st of November. And if you go follow this link, you will sign up for the invite, and then you will actually try an actually full version of a marketing automation system for free, and it will be free afterwards as well. So it's not just free for a trial or something. It's a free version that you can use free, like you said, forever. So go there, fill in the form, and as soon as we launch it in less than a month, you will have a mail, and you will be told to sign up for an account, and then you can start this if you don't already have a marketing automation system to start with scoring system and nurturing system, and just check it out and give us some feedback.
Jakob, I know you've got an offer, which I find interesting.
Yeah, since we're working a lot with companies' lead generation, lead nurturing process, we offer a free diagnostics test or an analysis, let's say, where we send a questionnaire where you can fill out answers to different questions of different areas of the lead generation process, and then we book a follow-up meeting where we give feedback on that and give you best practice advice and also recommendation to improvements and so forth. So in 1 hour free consultation meeting with a questionnaire as a base is what we offer for free for everyone who wants to have some feedback on their lead generation process.
Cool. I mean, I might take you up on that myself because I'm sure, as much as I think I know stuff, I'm sure there's lots I can still learn. So the handout and the recording, the handout's available now. The recording will be up in a little while. I would say wait for the email to come out so you know that it's actually there, but it should be there as early as tonight, but definitely within a couple of days. This is all our contact information. Now, if anybody has questions, there's a box on the right-hand side where you can ask questions. And Jakob, have there been questions that have been asked so far?
Yeah, we have a personal question to you, Craig, here. What's your best deal you ever made based on a trigger event that, you know, was one of your successes that have made
so
up?
So it's funny because the best deal was actually something I actually helped somebody else do, and they were trying to get into one of the largest IT manufacturing firms on the planet. They were sort of a startup, and something, you know, we were working on something, and something came along and all of a sudden made it more important. I can't give a whole lot of details, unfortunately, but it was a deal worth $10 million. I had, at my own occasion, several deals that were $1 million during my time, and all caused by an event. And one in particular I remember was when I used to live in Vancouver. I was an outside salesperson, and I had inherited some of the more senior accounts in the territory, and one of them actually was an account on Vancouver Island, and it was doing about $10 million worth of business with a competitor, and it was doing about $65,000 with us. And I looked at my territory and said, where's my growth going to be? And I said, there's this account on the island, and we get like nothing, and nobody goes there as a result. But hey, so they do business with 3 vendors, so there's 3 vendors and a purchasing person, and 3% of people change jobs every month. If I do my calculations right, within about 9 months, one of those relationships is going to be severed, and the new person is going to take that job, won't do as good a job, won't have a relationship, the customer won't complain, and there's this window of dissatisfaction. So I started going to the island, and when I lived in North Vancouver, it was a 45-minute drive to get to the ferry terminal. You have to go there early because very often the ferry's full, so you got to get there early to get your spot. So I'm leaving my house at 5:30. I get there at 6:15. I'm on a 7 o'clock ferry. I get there to the other side about at 8:30. I get to my account, the prospect, at about 9. And I went around and I saw all the engineers inside the firm and then would do that backwards. So I would leave the house at 5:30 and get home about the same time, 12 hours. And I said to everybody in the account, I'm going to be here every other week. And they all go, yeah, right. And I went every other week. And I realized that these people all loved to mountain bike. So I actually had a special event. I invited all of them, the engineers, from Vancouver Island to go to Whistler to go mountain biking, because I used to mountain bike in Whistler. And we had 21 of them show up for this event, and we had a blast. Well, guess what happened? Not long after that, there was a change in a relationship, and we went from $65,000 to $3 million in pretty much 90 days. So that's one of my favorite stories to tell. Any other questions, Jakob?
Yeah, and just want to say to everyone that if you have a question, please write it down in the box there, and we can address it right now. Another one we got here before is, what's the one advice that you would give a salesperson to start doing, Craig, on this trigger event area? You have given several ideas here and the process to start working with different things. But what's the one thing that you really think is crucial to start with if you want to?
So I think the most important thing, focus on the right people. Figure out who is or who will become the person that has money, authority, and influence. And if you are younger and don't have the confidence to call on someone who's the CEO of a Fortune 500 company, we'll figure out where do they come from. Well, they're more often the CEO of a mid-sized firm. So maybe you could call on a CEO of a mid-sized firm. Well, I'm not comfortable doing that. We'll call on a CEO of someone smaller. There is, in the book, there's a whole chapter of being someone's emotional favorite, and it's all about being the emotional favorite of the right people. All too often, salespeople are, talking to all these different people, hoping one of them will buy, but they're way too focused on people who don't have money, authority, and influence. So the first thing I would say, start everything with the right focus. If you read that chapter of the book, or if you want to get the form, it's at emotionalfavorite.com. You can spell it the English way with the U, or the American way without the U, or Canadian way without the U. Either way, you'll get to a place, fill in the form, explains exactly how to make it work. Who are the right people to focus on? Who is, or who is most likely to become someone with money, authority, and influence, and how do you start fostering a relationship with them as soon as possible?
That's a great answer there.
Now, Chris, I want to make sure everybody on the call understands. We're at our hour, but rather than just end the webinar, what we're going to do is we're going to stay as long as possible and make sure all the questions get answered. So if you've got a question, put it in. Okay, we'll get to as many as we possibly can before we have to part ways.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Next question, Jacob.
Okay. Well, there's a question here about the alignment between marketing and sales that you brought up in one of the slides here. What do you see as the key in order to get the alignment to work, where marketing tries to qualify the leads as much as possible, and the sales want that too, but in order to find the right level of qualification of leads, so to say, what's the key issue from your point of perspective here? And you, Magnus, can also jump in here.
Magnus, do you want to go first? Because, I think you can talk from a marketing perspective, and I'll talk from a sales perspective.
Yeah, I think it's quite easy in some way, and it's hard in reality, but you need to sit down with marketing and sales together and really define what type of characteristics do sales need to be able to work in an efficient way, based on the one analysis. What are the best customer? Do the persona of that one, so that marketing can go and look and have the scoring set to get those people. What kind of events, what kind of material should that person has been downloaded, been, like Craig said, what are the justify assets that you provide? And so you agree on those, and then what I would say, you put together, like you do in all service businesses, an SLA, service level agreement, that you're you deliver leads, and you agreed on with sales, and sales accept the leads, and then you have a process that tie together, that really close, that even though it's two different departments, the process should work as one. That's the simple answer for marketing, to get the right information from sales. So this is the kind of persons and companies that we should target, and then you fine-tune from marketing all the time and get feedback and do analysis on, are we delivering the right quality to sales all the time? That should be my answer.
Magnus took the words right out of my mouth. Get together as a team, that whole trigger event scoring, figure out what's a 10. So that's totally valid. So I think there's two other components for me that are important to making this work. First of all, when marketing passes a lead on to sales, as part of that service level agreement, there is a promise by the sales team to do a certain amount of activity on that salesperson, or on that prospect rather, before they leave it. And if they leave it for any reason, they have to pass it back to nurturing, so marketing can notify them again. The second thing I think is really important is sales should never create its own collateral. We all like to do it, but the problem is we're doing it. Marketing doesn't understand the way we think. They can't benefit from our thought processes, our experience, our context, as we talked about earlier. If you need something for a customer, throw it over to marketing and say, this is what I need. Tell them why you need it. They would love to help, but if you don't tell them, if you don't ask for it, they're not going to give it to you. So yes, agree on the things that matter, follow up based upon a promise that you've made, right? And then find a way to communicate effectively back to marketing, this is what I need and why, and how is that relevant to the qualifying factors you have decided on as a group.
Yeah, that's a great answer. It's a great answer. Okay, actually I think we have answered most of the questions, if not anybody has any more questions here. Okay, and it's almost 10 over the hour now, so I think we should end the session here. And I want to thank you, Craig, especially for your participation here today. That was a great presentation and great content you have there.
And I want to thank the two of you for doing this in English, because I will tell you, your English is 10 times better than my Swedish.
Yeah, I can imagine that. Thank you. Thank you, Craig.
Yeah, thank you so much. And to all our listeners, we hope you will download all the resources here you see on the slide, and we will, in short, get back to you with a recorded version for all of you who want to look at it again or send it to a colleague or so. Please do that. And we'll be happy to answer any questions you have even after the session is over here. So you have all our contact details here.
Okay. Thank you guys very much. I wish everybody luck. Happy hunting. Feel free to call if you have any questions at any point.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, thanks.
And remember,
Thank you for listening.
60% of the ones getting in pole position will win.